noticed that. I mean, it's like I said, you guys, and also you motivate your team. That wasn't the only. It's not just about applying, these kind of regulations to make sure that everybody's doing the same thing. We've talked before about how, well, you don't just want to tell them what to do. You want to get their buy-in, and you do that by encouraging, showing their progress, and giving them goals to achieve that they feel happy that they're achieving. So that's definitely been part of your success. Is that been on purpose? What's been your plan around that?
Yeah, I think, Dan, that's, prior to joining the healthcare industry, I worked in a different industry that I would suggest was very competitive. But it's important to know that it was competitive in a very friendly way. And so, one of the things that we found with maintenance care, it really is simple to give people data that they can look at. They're not threatened by it in any manner, but the people that are already doing good can see clearly where they are as far as even something like the number of tasks being done in a day, a week, a month. But we also divide those number of tasks by the number of maintenance personnel at the site. And that way, then you got a sort of a fair playing field, et cetera. And of course, now with 54 sites, there's a number of teams that, sort of in that top 10 that are always trying to outdo somebody else. And even the people that are at the bottom, it's really important, Dan, that we never ever send it out from a shaming perspective, but nobody ever likes to see themselves at the bottom. The interesting thing is, because we have so many measurables from maintenance care, is even the sites that are at the top in a lot of areas aren't necessarily at the top in every area. And even some of the sites that are at the bottom, maybe that they're low in getting tasks completed, but they're high in other areas, for example. And so we will share that in different methodologies, in different ways, in different sorts, if you will. So that way there's a bit more of a balance. And again, we always emphasize this is not fault finding, it is fact finding. Even when we found some sites that were getting more tasks going into the system than were being completed, they felt, I just keep falling further and further behind. We designed that spreadsheet that I think I shared with you, Dan, in a way that basically said, if you actually did, just one more task a day, you would actually, at the end of the year, be ahead. And I was really amazed that when we did that, is that about 90% of our sites went from being negative to being positive just by bringing it up in that perspective. Like, we had some sites that only needed to do, one more task a week, and that would make them positive. And then before you know it, every single one of our sites, Dan, was on the positive side, meaning that we're now at a point where we have sites where we run out of tasks to do.
Wow.
And some people will say, well, maybe you've got too many maintenance personnel there. So I don't necessarily share that kind of detail too broadly, but really what we were trying to do was just to make sure that sites, we're not falling behind, because you fall behind 100 over the course of a year. Well, after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, now you're going to be 400 behind, 500 behind, and you're just going to keep getting into a bigger and bigger hole. Fortunately, Dan, that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the simple math of it. One extra every day. It's the consistency that works, and you measure all those metrics well, and also show your team those metrics and make them understand it. And I think that's kind of a big part of the success there. And so tell me, about your previous industry that you were in and how different it was. Like, what industry was it in, and what's the, compared to senior care, what are some of the differences, and just generally how how the maintenance teams behaved at the locations, and how you interacted with the different people in the environment?
Yeah, well, actually, I used to work for Cineplex Entertainment for about 28 years before I joined aged care, actually, Dan.
So you
Uh,
started when you were 10 years old?
14
Yeah.
actually,
Oh,
working
wow.
working as a movie usher in Kingston, Ontario, and I actually managed my first drive-in movie theater when I was 17 in Kingston, Ontario, and I closed the last drive-in in Toronto, which was in Markham. Back in 1985 is when it closed, an old four-screen drive-in movie theater many years ago. But it was a lot different on the maintenance side of things. Working in the movie industry, Dan, is they didn't really pay as much attention to maintenance. And when something broke, it was more a case of, well, you call a plumber, you call an electrician. You didn't really have a guy. Now, I did have the benefit because of my skill set, I guess, around maintenance and those kinds of things, etc. Is that I was able to fix a lot of things that other people neglected, or they wouldn't call a contractor in just to fix a couple of seats. They would wait till there's 10 or 15 seats broken, then they would call somebody in. But my site never had broken seats because I fixed them as they broke, kind of thing. And so, I guess that got me noticed a little bit, because every time somebody had walked in from the corporate office, from Cineplex, my location always looked spectacular. Ultimately that got me into, the regional director for Western Canada. And I did all the way from Winnipeg to Vancouver Island in the movie business. But unfortunately, the movie business at that time was growing, just like aged care is currently growing. And I lost my job on the seventh merger with the organization, but they took great care of me, and I fell into this job, very shortly after. And again, a lot of it was based on that experience that I have from the movie theaters, and it's certainly great memories for sure, Dan, but a lot different. They're a lot different, but at the end of the day, always went into it with sort of a customer service focus. And that certainly pays dividends always.
Yeah.